Hey guys, welcome to the Challenge Podcast. I'm Coach Steve.
And I'm Coach Nick, and we're going to be talking about everything fitness, health, and the challenge.
Let's get on with the show.
What's up guys, Coach Steve here. Welcome back to another episode of the Coach's Corner, where Coach Nick and I offer our tip for the week. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm really good, thanks, Coach Steve. I'm loving our Coach's Corners. They've had, we've done one, but it's had great response so far. So 100% of the time, all of the time, it's doing really well.
Yeah, and so much so that we're back for round two with episode number 2. We've got an exciting episode ahead. But look, Nick, let's jump right into it. We're in the ring. We're in our little boxing ring. You're in the red corner. I'm in the blue corner. And you've got your Coach's Corner. So take us away. What advice do you have for us this week?
Here I am. Hello, everybody. So this is the time when everybody's asking, what supplements should I take for the challenge? What do I need? What do you recommend? What do I need to do? How do I change everything that I'm currently doing to make it into a perfect person that will achieve the results that I want to achieve? And then how will I continue my life on from there? Well, that's the bit actually that we need to worry about, because you don't want to change yourself too much. So what I want to talk to you about is the foundations of training and nutrition, in sort of broader terms, the foundations of, let's just call it health. Let's just put it under the banner of, if you want to try and get healthier, improve your life, because then generally those markers improve anyway from that. So the first thing that I have to say is, and you will agree with me, Coach Steve, I'm sure, it doesn't matter really what you end up doing, whether it's stepping, whether it's running, whether it's doing our weights programs. The most important thing is to be compliant and have consistency in what you are doing. So if you've never done anything before, say, for example, Shane had not done group fitness weights classes before, but now he started to do them. So it's very important for him to be consistent before he decides whether it's helping him or not. So for any nutrition strategy or training strategy, consistency is the most important aspect to take into consideration. So if you're thinking, I can do this for 1 or 2 weeks, but it doesn't fit into my life for the rest of the time, I would invite you, sound like Coach Steve here, but I would invite you to rethink your strategy and think long term. So consistency could be, okay, I don't have the time every day to do 10,000 steps, but I am going to make sure that I do 5,000. It's better to do something rather than nothing, rather than go, okay, I'm going to do 10,000 one day and then I've just worn myself out and I can't do anything else for the rest of the week. So consistency. So write this down, everybody. You've got to formulate a plan that you can stick to long term. So even to do with, say, dieting, it's really important, in my opinion, in a 12-week challenge. It's so tempting to slide that slider. If you haven't seen the app yet, you won't know, but we have an option that says rapid weight loss, and that's red rag to a bull. When you want rapid results, you're thinking, I'm going to do that. But there's one thing, your body is going to very quickly adapt to those lower calories, and then you'll have to do a whole bunch of other stuff. But also you might find yourself getting super hungry and not complying and not being consistent with it. You might go, I've done it for 4 days, I'm starving, I'm tired, I need a break. And rightly so, if you're not used to doing it. So therefore you might suddenly go, oh, I can't do it. Whereas what you've done is you've just made it that little bit harder for yourself to stick to. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with admitting that, because the consistency of staying with something like a moderate weight loss is going to actually help you in the end. We know that I love bunnies and it's the year of the rabbit, but the hare and the tortoise story, I have to vote for the tortoise in this one. So, unfortunately for the bunny family, I'm voting tortoise. So you need to, so this is really talking to people who haven't done this before, or picking it up again. You need to factor in what your lifestyle is like. So if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily factor time in for the gym, or is somebody who doesn't have the time to prep stuff, it's silly to suddenly say, I'm going to be doing 6 days of all of that. I think a compromise would be good. I think setting some equipment up at home, finding some time to do that, going on your walks, and maybe prepping even, say, a protein source, doing some chicken, something like that, and then having a supermarket salad or some veggies to start off with is the way to go. In fact, that's how we do it anyway. It's not a secret thing. I know people on Instagram make prepping look amazing. Mine never looks like that. That's why you never see my food on Instagram. I'm definitely not a pretty food person. So yeah, I don't want you to fail. I want you to succeed. And I really think that the consistency is the base of everything. So that is really important. The next step is the one that everyone goes on about, especially once again on the internet, on Instagram: energy balance, calories in, calories out. So that's how it's summarized. That's how we're going to talk about it. You do need to make sure that you are eating in the right way for your goal. Now, if your goal is to put on muscle, then you want to be eating in an energy surplus. You want to make sure that you have enough calories to fuel that muscle building. If you want to lose body fat first, you need to then eat in a deficit, because that is what's going to help you lose that body fat. If you think, I want to do both, of course, we all want to do both, but it is just better to pick one goal first. So if you've got some fat to lose, I'd choose that first, and then you can go into the muscle building. Now, it might be a bit confusing. I've been thinking about this. Might be a bit confusing because perhaps you think the minute that you walk into a gym, you're going to be muscle building. And if you're brand new, that is actually true. But just because you're lifting a weight doesn't mean necessarily you're going to build muscle if, you know, in a huge way, if you are in a calorie deficit, if you're in an energy deficit. So weight training is important to preserve whatever muscle you have got while you are trying to lose body fat. But it doesn't mean just because you're touching your weight, you are choosing to gain muscle. So maybe that's something that's a bit confusing for people. Just lift the weights, stay consistent, but get that energy balance right. And also do it over time. So track everything at first. You know, eventually you'll graduate and you won't need to track everything because you'll start to be able to eyeball it. But track everything: licks, bites, tastes, anything that goes into your mouth, have a track of it, because I think you'll find that then things will start to happen for you. And I think also that's a common theme in the top 10s. Then we go to macros. So everybody will, once you get your plan, you'll be going, what macros do I need? Remember, before macros comes the calories, the energy balance. That's really important. The macronutrients, the proteins, the carbs, the fats. Well, we need our protein. We want to prioritize protein. The other two are interchangeable. So it's really, say for myself, I'm pretty good with carbs in terms of the way that I need them. I think probably humans are in general. I think you've even said that to me, Coach Steve. I'm not an exceptional, I'm just a normal, like I'm like a car, you know, my preferred fuel is carbs, and I fuel it, and that's why I can lift good things and good things happen. But for some people, you might prefer fats, but just make sure you get that protein. But you want to always remember calories first before the macros. So it's good to know, but you don't have to have the exact ratios when you are just starting out and learning. So don't get overwhelmed by that, and don't listen to the noise out there about that. That can come later. The next is your micronutrients and your fiber. So they're important, and that's why I'm talking about them, but that comes later as well. So that's also things like when people say, if it fits your macros, so you can just eat whatever, it is good also to give your body that nice, fuel that comes from things that are high in fiber, veggies, fruits. And there's nothing wrong with fruit, in my opinion. I don't know if anyone's heard that it's not good, but I love it. I think it's important also to understand that sometimes with veggies and things that are quite filling, you tend to eat less if you eat them. And my secret is to always eat a nice piece of protein, some veggies, and then say to myself, if I want something else, I can have a treato. So then I'll let myself have a treat if I want a treat. But by then, I'm generally pretty full if I'm actually listening to my real appetite. Then we've got, people will ask, when should I eat? So nutrient timing. So that's important around training. I think it's really important to train fueled. I've trained unfueled. I've trained fueled. For me, it works better to eat something prior. That is also personal preference. But I think for lifting things, it is good to have something. And also the other side of the coin is people say you shouldn't eat carbs before bed. I don't think that matters as well. I think as long as your digestion feels fine and you can sleep well, it doesn't really matter when you eat these allocated calories at all. It's up to you, except for when it comes to performance, and then also perhaps that pointy end of body composition where you have to time your meals, probably because the calories are getting quite low and you want to spread it out and have enough energy for the day. Then at the very top is, we love them, but supplements, that's where we people are asking, sometimes they ask before anything else, what supplements should I have? So we want you to have them, but we want you to have them when all the other things are in order. So then we can choose our supplements as we speak about. So that's when you've got a good grasp of all the other building blocks, that's when they become more vital to your fat loss, and they can really help you out and they can give you that edge. So, I personally think that once you've got your consistency, you can start to inject some of these other things in, because something like a caffeine or a pre-workout might actually help you to maintain that consistency. And Steve, you will relate to this, because sometimes when you are extremely knackered, something like that can be the difference between getting into the gym or not. So I do think that these things they're there, but they're also a little bit fluid in terms of where they can live on the pyramid, depending on what's going on in your life. So there's my little pyramid coach's corner. I'm just sitting in a pyramid like an Egyptian cat.
No, I love it. And yeah, I think that many of us will put the cart before the horse, where we jump into this thing and what is the secret ingredient that is going to get me my results, right? And they're maybe stressing out about what protein to take, or what type of protein, or the timing of said protein. It's like, whoa, you got your train and you're trying to drive it backwards. Let's start with the first thing, and you nailed it, Nick, where we've got to have some sort of foundation of a habit, a routine, some consistency. Because if you're not there with your consistency, or in another word, maybe your adherence, then there's no point in doing anything, right? Because you're not adhering to it. And I often relate this fitness thing that we're trying to do with other goals that people may have in life, such as, I want to learn an instrument, or I want to speak another language, or I want to try to save money to buy a house. Whatever that goal is, you're following a similar framework. Hey, you want to learn an instrument? Okay, you need to have dedicated time where you could practice to play the instrument. You need to have dedicated time to learn how to read music, and then be able to interpret that music and then put it all together and play the guitar or piano, whatever it is. So it's a mixture of this practical sense and then this theoretical sense. Same thing with this fitness thing. We need to have dedicated time to be able to go and practice our squats and our deadlifts and our bench press and our bicep curls. But then we also need theoretical time, being like, okay, what is a calorie? What is a carbohydrate? How does my hydration levels influence this thing? How does my sleep influence this thing? Should I be worrying about this latest popular supplement that I saw on TikTok, right? We need to choose our priorities and what is going to be the big rocks in our endeavors. Yeah. And I think the first step is just to create the time and capacity and the resources to be able to do this damn thing. So if you want to go and learn another language, you need to have the time, energy, and resources to be able to do that thing. And if you don't, well, it's all just a pipe dream where you go, I want to do it, but we need to put energy towards being able to do the thing. So really, you really just nailed it there. And I just see it way too often where we stress about all the minutiae of it all, but we miss out on all the big rocks where we're actually just going to the gym, getting some work in, and then going home and sleeping. All the good stuff.
Yeah, hear me out. The thing is that, as you would say, hear me out. I'm starting to sound like you. Hear me out. I think that if you actually listened to me and did that, then I reckon you'll get some great results. So let me know. Let me know throughout the 12-week challenge or at the end if you listened to this and it helped at all.
No, so good, Nick. So good. Nick, I want to take us on a journey to the other side of the ring. We're in the blue corner now, Coach Steve corner. And I would like to talk about locking out while you're training. Okay. So locking out while you're training. And we're going to start by defining out what you mean by locking out when you're training. I'm talking about our joints, and I'm referring to the idea of taking our joints to its full range of motion to a point where it is at its end range of motion or locked out while we're doing an exercise. Okay.
Yep.
Now, the prime example is something like a leg press. Okay, where I see it often, people will be doing a leg press, and there's a little bit of worry about getting the legs actually straight, or even to a full range of motion in the knee, where the knee actually goes into a little bit of extension. Okay, about 10 degrees of extension. A little bit of fear around that. Okay, and there's two reasons why I think this has occurred, where individuals would be afraid or want to avoid locking out. Firstly, it's a worry about injuries, or a higher risk of injuries occurring. And often it's because of the one or two videos that we've seen online of someone hyperextending their knees. And we often don't know that those individuals were either had super lax joints, they were moving into a range of motion that they weren't ready for, or there's some videos of even people pushing against their knees and like forcing them into the other direction. So, okay, they're just being a little bit silly and unsafe with what they're doing, not the act of taking the leg into full range of motion is the problem. Talking about the safety idea, right? When you consider the knee, and I'm going to be talking a lot about the knee, but it's applied across the entire bodies. Our knee is designed to go into extension. It is designed to go into lockout. And we take our leg through a full range of motion, especially the knee, when we do activities of daily living, such as squatting, getting off of chairs, walking upstairs, walking, running. Okay, so we take the leg through those ranges of motion through every other activity, and you take that across any other sport, and the knee is being used to its full extent. Not only full flexion, full extension, but also its rotational capacities. So you could then say, well, why are we not doing that in the gym as well? Okay. Now, in terms of safety, I would say that it's safer to take the knee through a full range of motion where we are locking out, because we have a very clear start and end position. Injuries occur when we take our tissues through a range of motion that we're not ready for. Okay, so I'll say that again. It occurs when we take our tissues through positions or loads that we're not ready for. So if you're constantly training your knee to, let's say, 90 degrees, you go from like, full flexion where your calves are touching your hamstrings, and you only train it to 90 degrees of a bend. You would only have strength through that range of motion. As soon as you go to beyond 90 degrees, that's uncharted territory. You don't have strength in that area. So you are at a higher risk of having an injury occur. So what would be better is if we train the knee through its full range of motion so that we have strength in every aspect of the knee's normal and biomechanical range of motion. Okay. That does mean that you would need to manage your load accordingly. So if you were to grab, 500 kilos or something stupid, put it on a leg press, and then push yourself into lockout, okay, you're asking for something dangerous to happen because you're not ready for that load, regardless if it's lockout or if it's not, because it's just too much load, okay? So we just need to scale the load accordingly. So I would say it's safer to move through full range of motion, right? And then over time, as we strengthen the full range of motion, we don't need to use as much load because we're taking the leg through its full range of motion to achieve the same stimulus as you would if you maybe half range of motion did or avoided lockout, where you would need more load to get a similar stimulus, which would add to more fatigue and more high risk of injury. So it's safer to go to lockout, right? Because we're training it through a full range of motion. The next rationale as to why someone would avoid locking out is because they may have watched some golden era bodybuilders, or even current bodybuilders, where they go, nah, bro, you can't lock out. You got to have constant tension on the muscle, right? Which isn't the the best idea. Okay, so time and attention, TUT, popular concept around training, has its limitations. The idea is that if we avoid the end ranges of motion or avoid locking out, we can have consistent tension on the muscle. And sure, the more tension we have on the muscle, the greater the sensation of the pump or the metabolites building up, which has some influence to our overall hypertrophy outcomes. It makes it harder, right? We feel the burn, yes, we know that something's happening. But what happens is, because of the burn sensation, because of the metabolites, we end up doing fewer reps through that time and attention than if we did like a full rep where we go from a 0 degrees to a full lockout, meaning that we're going from the maximal range of motion of that joint. So then we're training the muscle through its maximal range of motion. So we're missing out on a bunch of it. So my advice would be to actually take the exercise through a full range of motion where you are actually extending the joint, flexing the joint the whole way. You'll find that if you take it through the full stretch position, that can lead to greater hypertrophy signals, and that's demonstrated in current literature, which is really cool. So take yourself into that stretch position, stretch mediated hypertrophy, massive, give it a go, stretch. You get more of a stimulus because we're taking it through those end ranges of motion, and we essentially are able to train your muscle closer to failure, basically, meaning that because we're safer going to full lockout, full range of motion, those micro pauses can take us closer to our failure point, which can lead to better execution of straight sets, more stimulus, more growth. Okay, so the two primary reasons why we would avoid range of motion, locking out, is one, acute injury risk, and two, potentially more stimulus. Both of those are limiting, where we go, well, if anything, it's safer by locking out because we're training end ranges of motion. We have a clear start and end position. We know exactly what areas we have capacity in, and we could use less load to achieve the same result. And then in terms of the stimulus side of things, in terms of the gains, the pure gains, we could do more reps, get more stimulus through a full range of motion, targeting the different regions of the muscle. We get a stretch response, and we get closer to failure. We kind of weigh it up and go, well, what's the point of worrying about avoiding locking out? And the only reason that we would avoid locking out is if we know that it's just simply uncomfortable. Yeah. So if we know that we've got kind of like that naggy elbow or the naggy knee, that if we do take it through a full range of motion where we go into that little bit of extension into a full lockout, and that's what really irritates it, okay, you don't have to, you don't need to, you're not a bad person if you don't do that. But the belief that we need to avoid locking out might be a limiting factor, and you may get a better overall performance outcome, better results, and closer to your goals by taking yourself to lockout and then a full range of motion.
Isn't it funny how, say, like with a deadlift, if you didn't lock it out, then it wouldn't be considered to be a lift?
Yeah. And just jumping on that point, Nick, like taking something like a leg press. All right, be careful, don't lock out with a leg press. But when you do a squat, when you do a deadlift, when you do a lunge, you're locking out, right? Because you
have to.
You have to stand up.
You would be like Gumby, or you would collapse like spaghetti.
Yeah. So if you were going to do a squat and you didn't lock out, then your legs wouldn't be straight. You wouldn't be standing up. So I find it funny that we're worried about something like the leg press, but then with something like squats, deadlifts, no issues there, not a problem. Okay, yeah, maybe like sports specific stuff, like, all right, we're talking about powerlifting. Hey, if you don't lock out, it doesn't count. All right, we're talking about sports. And, you could apply that to a whole range of different sports, like, powerlifting or gymnastics, or, other team-based sports. If you don't lock out, it doesn't count as a rep. It doesn't count in the sport. It doesn't count as a demonstration. Or you're just leaving things on the table. Like, let's say in boxing, like those guys and girls are going to full lockout to get the full maximum force. And then if anything, a little bit further where they're trying to get a little bit more reach. So they're not even locking out their elbow, they're locking out the entire shoulder complex to try to get the most reach. So they're taking advantage of the full range of motion at maximal force to get better at their sport. But then for, our gym bro and broettes, we're worried about locking out for some reason. I think it's just an idea that is floated around the fitness industry since the dawn of fitness. Similar to, knees don't go over the toes. Like, I don't know why we're still talking about that. So experiment with, getting your elbow straight, getting the knee straight, taking the joints through a full range of motion. You may need to lighten the load, but you may find that is the tipping point, the step change to getting these really amazing results that you've been looking for.
Yes, that's really good, because also, like, if you just think about our challenges, often they are trying to get info from, say, your YouTubes and your things, and there's a lot of conflicting info out there. So you can understand why they would be confused. So it's good that we've got Coach Steve to clear it up.
Coach Steve to clear it up, yes. But yeah, look, Nick, let's wrap it up there for this episode of the Coach's Corner, episode number 2 of the Coach's Corner. If you liked this episode, let us know, and we'll catch you next week for episode number 3. Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you like the show, share it with a friend.
Or leave us a review on iTunes to spread the good word. See you next time.